are those official cameras or that part of the one of the
I have no idea. Fabulous to see so many people come out this afternoon for this. This is the ArtsVote Calgary Mayor's Forum for the Arts. My name is Jim Brown. I work with CBC Radio, and I'm happy to be here and happy to see such a great crowd. And also happy to have 8 candidates on the stage. Now we have a bit of an unusual format for this discussion today. The organizers wanted me to tell you that they had to make arrangements to get the candidates quite early, and there are a couple of candidates running for mayor who are not on stage but are here this afternoon. So afterwards, I'll ask anyone who wants to stay to stick around. You can put your questions to them. They'd be, I'm sure, more than happy to stick around and answer those questions for you, as will hopefully some of the candidates on the stage with me too. Now, ArtsVote is a nonpartisan group of Calgary citizens who believe that the arts are a vital component of a healthy, vibrant community. The goal at ArtsVote is to raise awareness of mayoral and aldermanic candidates with a clear arts strategy, and to enable all Calgarians to make an educated voting decision on October 18th. Each candidate is going to have 1.5 minutes off the top to tell us all how they, as mayor, will help ensure that Calgary becomes a cultural capital of Canada.
Thank you, Jim, and good afternoon, all. You're cutting into my time there, Mary. I want to start by saying arts and culture are foundational to a great city, a key pillar on which a great city is built. Arts and culture inspire, engage, and build spirit. They attract the people needed to make a city great, and they are essential to keeping them here. So a flourishing arts and culture scene is essential to a great city. It's not negotiable. As I launched my campaign in June, back in early June, I stated my commitment to arts and culture. And I said that I, as mayor, would expand the concept of infrastructure to include facilities for arts and culture. A city of roads and roundabouts, absent arts and culture, may get people around, but will never be great. And Calgary has an amazing array of exceptional arts groups. Alas, many of them don't have a place to play. With all of the wonders that we have, one might wonder what more could and should be done. As mayor, I would support facility upgrades and additional facilities. I talked to a young man just on the way in, about 15 seconds. I would ensure current groups are supported and sustained. I would support the promotion of all, and I would enhance public art. Arts and culture will make a huge contribution to ensuring the best, brightest people who come to Calgary to work stay here to make it their home. Thank you.
I just have an important announcement to make that I forgot to make earlier. For all of you tweeters out there, the hashtag is ArtsVoteYYC. For all of you other people out there, I don't know what that means either.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here today. And as mayor of Calgary, I would make sure that we do not waste our current position of doing a great job in the arts, and we would enhance it. And I have to tell you, the center of my campaign, my vision is to make Calgary the economic heart of Canada. And I want you to know that that is a package. You cannot be the economic heart of Canada. First of all, we're having great business, great jobs for us so that our kids can look after themselves, and we can. And you can't have business unless you got a vibrant arts, culture, and recreation scene going on. And I understand those two things go hand in hand, and they go together. You can't keep the business with the arts and without the arts and culture. And you can't keep the arts and culture without the business. I don't see it as an either or. I see it as must have both. As mayor, I'll continue to work with the arts community and with council to enhance that. A couple of the things that I have done is I have convinced my colleagues on council to agree to have a bonusing program, which a short description of that is somebody that gets the ability to build a 10-story building. We might let them build 12 or 14 stories as long as they create some space, perhaps rehearsal space, perhaps a space for seniors to meet, those types of things. And I also championed the festivals policy for council, which I will continue to support, and I look forward to talking to you more once this last second is over.
The question was, if Calgary were Canada's cultural capital. I got news for you folks. Calgary is Canada's cultural capital. And I can tell you that just by looking in front of my nose. Look at the people in this room. We've got amazing artists, people named Mark Laws, Mark Hopkins. We've got amazing arts administrators, Colin Jackson, Scott McTavish. We've got amazing volunteers, Chima and Kemderim. You know, we've got what it takes here to make stuff happen for the arts. And I've been a long-time advocate for the arts. I know so many of you in the room, and I'm so thrilled that the councils that Alderman McIver and Alderman Connolly and Alderman Hawksworth have sat on have done such great things for the arts. But there's more. We need better spaces, both for flagship spaces like the Epcor Centre and spaces for emerging artists. We need to make life easier and better for artists by engaging in live-work zoning, zoning for live-work studios, I should say, repurposing of industrial areas, looking at the International Avenue Arts and Cultural District, and a bunch of the other things we do to make life better for all Calgarians have a direct impact on artists. Better public transit, more affordable housing, legalizing secondary suites. I have been, as many of you know, a strong advocate for the arts for many, many years. I'm pleased that my work and the work of so many people in the room has had so much of an impact on Calgary's art scene already, and I'm looking forward, as your mayor, to making sure that we recognize that we're not investing in arts only for art's sake. We're investing in the arts because the arts are a primary economic driver of this city and an important place for us to invest if we're going to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Jane Jacobs had a famous quote. She said, "First you build your cities, and then they build you." I thought about that, and I thought, why don't we build our people first, and then build a city that suits us? And with that in mind, I came up with the theme for my campaign of people first. How do we build a better group of people, or how do we help our people achieve their utmost? Now, some of you may remember me when I was a high-profile alderman on the city council under Al Dewar. Others may remember me as an MLA with the province. That's a rare combination of experience. Some of you may remember me from my over 30 years in business with businesses such as Casablanca Video, which became a finalist for Small Business of Alberta of the Year. And some of you may know me from being a global markets financial advisor, which is really important experience to have in a mayor today. Said, but it's not really important what I've done in the past other than to show that I have the experience to be able to deliver. And that's the question you have to ask yourself. Who's going to be able to deliver on all the talk? I said, when we really get down to what we need here in Calgary, my experience at things like starting Alberta's very first BRZ Summer Festival, the Marda Loop, I said, I have a long history helping with festivals. I helped found the Barbecue on the Bow Festival, for example. I said, I've been in the trenches when you had to get dirty, roll up your sleeves, and actually make it happen from the grassroots up. So I have the track record, I have the ability, I have the experience, and I have what it takes to make Calgary the best cultural capital in Canada. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. What a great turnout today. It's fantastic to see so many people out here. And I think it just goes to show how important the arts are for Calgary. I'm going to give you a little bit of my history. I currently sit on the Stampede board, and of course, with the Stampede, you deal a lot with talent, you deal a lot with the young Canadians. In the past, I've sat on the Calgary Economic Development Board, and there you deal a lot with facilities, of course, and trying to create more facilities for this great city. And I've also sat on the Tourism Board, and of course, the Tourism Board is connected to the marketing, and the marketing of arts in particular. And when I was on the Tourism Board, it was interesting because we tried to pull together a lot of the arts community to go and promote the arts. And I can remember getting up on Saturday mornings and going down to the tower and doing a little spot on Global every Saturday morning to tell Calgarians what was going on that Saturday and what was going on that following week. Because we got to do a better job of connecting the great arts that we have here with the population. The question, of course, is about the culture capital of Canada. I was involved in the first effort. This is the second effort, and hopefully it'll go very well from a tourism perspective because we need to get this. Council approved about $667,000, and that'll get matched by about $2 million from the feds. But here's the bottom line, and here's what I want you to remember because it's critically important. Arts is infrastructure. It is at the end of the day, at least from a tourism guy, because it drives economic development at the end of the day. When you have arts, you have tourists coming to town, and that means money in everybody's pocket. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here today.
Cue the West Wing music. So, I'll make this very quick because I want to get succinct here what we're trying to do. Ladies and gentlemen, I actually have already announced our arts policy. It's online, and I'll tell you it's about 5-point action plan. First of all, what we need is a mayor who'll be a champion for the arts and the patron of our art community. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to support the upcoming Stampede and the cultural, make sure that we are the cultural capital of Canada, recognized by all Canadians. Second thing is capital infrastructure. I'm telling you right now as mayor, we're going to invest $100 million into the arts, and that will go into $5 million into ensuring that the film studio happens on the west side of the city. There's economic benefits for that, as well as East Village as an opportunity to create an area of an arts culture of music, arts galleries, and of course a downtown library. Public art. I was one of the aldermen that, I think Bob as well, that we actually supported the 1% policy to continue to give back that some on this board did not. Other thing is embrace local talent. This is what makes Calgary great, our people. That's our strength, that's our quality, and I'm committed to doing that. I'm going to make it easier for people to live in this city by offering things like allowing to live workplaces and to promote affordable housing, especially in certain areas where it makes sense around TO2 areas. Last thing is improving existing policies. A lot of the problems in the arts, believe it or not, is not money. It's council policies that prevent you from having theater shows in certain areas, signage. So these are things that we can do to cut the red tape to make arts even better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to see so many of you here today. And Calgary does have a wonderful foundation of arts and culture. And it's because of folks like you that we have this foundation and leadership in our community. You help knit our community together. You help the creative spirit of our community come forward. And in my view, what you do is essential to the quality of life in Calgary. So the first thing we need to do is create arts and declare that arts and culture are essential services in Calgary and to our quality of life. The second thing we need to do to become Calgary, Canada's cultural capital, is win the bid and support that bid for 2012. That could be a wonderful celebration of everything that's great about Calgary. It's the 100th anniversary of the Calgary Stampede. It's the 100th anniversary of the Calgary Public Library and our recreation department and the Grand Theatre, well, Grand anyway, which is now a theatre. There's so many things about Calgary that we could bring together for a year-round celebration, and leading up to that, the engagement of our community and engagement of the arts community. But you know what? That's the right priority. You got to have the right mayor and council who are going to have the resources available and the capacity to make it happen. And that's not a given. It's going to depend on how you vote as Calgarians on October 18th.
Hello, and thank you for being here. This is a great turnout. If I were mayor and Calgary were the cultural capital of Canada, and you know, there's so many ways to hear that question. I agree with Nahed. We are a cultural capital, and I agree we need to support the cultural event of becoming the cultural capital. This is very personal for me because I grew up in dance and theater and in music. And then as a career, I moved from the traditional arts to the more applied arts. I became a writer as a journalist and a documentarian. So this is very personal for me because I feel that the arts formed who I am. And my parents encouraged that in all three of us girls from the very beginning. So I understand the personal benefit. I also understand the economic benefit to a city. We get corporations moving here because arts make this city very interesting, and they make it a place to stay and call home and be stimulated and be creative, be innovative. As mayor, I believe we need to change our bylaws and zoning to allow for the duo spaces. I believe that we need to move towards secondary suites, and I know we're going to talk more about this. But number one, as mayor, I think it's most important that your mayor be your champion and be your booster in this. And I've been doing that for 21 years since I've been here. I'm a patron, I'm a volunteer, and I do feel I am also an artist. This is very personal to me.
ArtsVote has been collecting questions. They've been collecting them from local arts organizations and from arts supporters, people who attend arts and culture events. Now, as we have 8 candidates here today, we also have 8 questions. We'll go to our first question. I'll draw a name out of the box. Whosever name is on that will have 2 minutes to answer the question. Each candidate has 1 red card and 1 yellow card. Think of these as like coach challenge flags. These are not meant to suggest in any way the yellow and red cards given out in a soccer match. Think of them more in a sort of a North American football context. Each candidate has 1 red rebuttal, which is a minute and a half, and 1 yellow rebuttal, which is a minute. So once again, we hear a question, I draw a name, that person answers for 2 minutes. The first person to raise their red rebuttal card gets to rebut. But then they must throw their card on the floor. Throw it away, because they can't rebut again. Then the first person who raises the yellow card gets to do the final 1-minute rebuttal. We don't have every single candidate answering every single question.
I'm Paul Chambers, and I'm with Alberta Ballet.
The lack of art spaces in Calgary is a major challenge for artists of all disciplines, and it is almost prohibitively difficult to create new art spaces. In 2010, a number of multi-use art spaces like the All Ages Space, Comrade Sound, and the New Black were threatened with forced closure and fines from the City of Calgary. Many spaces have cited narrow business licenses and land use designations as a primary hurdle to their operation. As mayor, do you support a broader blanket cultural use designation for such multi-use spaces, and how would you go about ensuring that potential licensing issues involving artistic practices be addressed before the point of fines and closure?
Now, who will it be? Barb Higgins. Yay! 2 minutes, starting now.
Okay, I think we need complete communities, and that includes the arts. We absolutely need to allow artists to move into whatever community they want and to be able to work and live and create. And so I think this is part of the whole bigger picture in how we develop our city, that every single community should welcome artists in, and that is the tone that needs to be set. Instead of being restrictive and shutting down spaces, we need to set the tone from the very beginning, that we need to welcome artists into our communities, because this is about revitalization for no matter what community an artist moves into. And I know we have some areas in our city that need revitalization. Edmonton has been a great example of where they've opened up 118th Avenue, it's called Alberta Avenue, and they have really encouraged artists to move into this area, and it has completely revitalized to the point where the Fringe Festival has now moved to a second space where it's White Avenue and Alberta Avenue, and that can only foster growth wherever artists come in. I mean, anyone who's been to New York knows the energy that comes from creating community like this. Now, in terms of how you go about preventing this from the beginning, I think that's just setting a tone. I think it's making it very clear that artists are valued. And that's a very simple thing to do. And I'm not familiar with these 2 specific cases about why that went on. It doesn't make any sense to me. There might be specifics, but I think it's very clear for Calgary to move forward that we have to invite artists in Calgary and from Alberta and around the world. We need to make this a very welcoming environment for artists.
All right, thank you, Barb Higgins. John Lord, throw that red challenge card on the floor. Your minute and a half starts now.
Thank you. You know, it's just so easy to say, but it's sure a lot harder to do, isn't it? It's just so much more complicated than saying, well, we just need to welcome artists in, because the reality is the City of Calgary does have a very complicated land use bylaw, 1P 2007, and that land use bylaw is so restrictive and so prescriptive that it makes it almost impossible for any small business out there or almost anyone else to to basically get through the red tape at City Hall. And I look at artists and artist studios and places and spaces as all having to come under this restrictive land use zoning. If you really want to fix this problem, you've got to get into that land use bylaw. And you've got to start asking the questions about how are we going to create a situation that small businesses and art galleries and all sorts of other things that we will need, the infrastructure, basically, how are they going to survive financially with the kind of taxes they're being asked to pay? How are they going to even get in there with the long delays in red tape and having to do all kinds of things they shouldn't have to? You know, my work in revitalizing the district of Marda Loop and then later Victoria Park, that was a lot of hard work. That was a lot of in-the-trench work. And it's just so easy to say this is what we're going to do, but to actually make it work is very, very complicated. And that's where I think I could really bring value to the table when I am your mayor. I've done it before. We can do it again, but you really need to get into the details of how to do that. Thank you.
And our yellow card challenger is Craig Burrows. Beautiful.
Okay. First of all, both candidates here talked about short-term plans. First of all, I tell the building inspectors to take 5. Okay, so just leave people alone for a bit. And yes, the short-term plan is looking at existing policies, which I announced at the beginning. But you know what? It all comes down to long-term planning. It's about infrastructure. We don't have the facilities. So if you don't have the facilities, invest. That's why I see East Village as the literally a blank canvas. I see Chris from East Village, responsible for East Village, is here. And you know what? You look at San Diego. What San Diego did, they had the same area. It's called actually East Village, a blighted area, that they put a stadium. There's only 3 ways to revitalize East Village as far as I'm concerned. You either need a sports center, you either need universities, or you need arts. So to me, my plan is a downtown library with the art gallery, with the music center, and that will drive people there. That's going to create a more dynamic community. It's going to bring people into the downtown and live in the downtown. That's what we need to make art survive.
All right, our second questioner can take the mic now.
I'm the director of Market Collective. It's a local artist market that happens in Kensington. Many artists and art organizations see the high cost of living and studio space in Calgary as a barrier. How would you justify and finance affordable housing and studio space options for creatives in Calgary?
Joe Connolly.
Well, I think when you look at affordable housing in Calgary, it's very expensive, and it's expensive not only for artists, it's expensive for everyone. And the challenge, of course, is that City Council had a lot to do with that. City Council restrict land supply, we've got user fees and things like that. And housing is critically important, and we need to get out of the red tape, which was the previous question, and we need to actually put what I call attainable housing out there as well. And I'll tell everyone a little story about my ward. I'm in Ward 6, and Ward 6 is fairly affluent. And I can remember about 1.5 years ago, I brought forward a project called the Summit of Montreux. And it's an attainable housing project. And I went to a room, it was Weber Academy, it was probably filled with as many people like this. And I got absolutely roasted by all the neighbors that were there because they didn't want this in their backyard. And I think we can talk about policy, we can talk about plans, or you can have someone stand up and say, no, this is right. This has to go in your community. And they were yelling at the City of Calgary people who were there as well on the side. And I got up, and this is what I said when I started. I said, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of emotion in the room. A lot of yelling. And I said, don't yell at those people. I'm the one you should direct your anger at. I'm the one who voted for the project. Because at the end of the day, there's wrong and there's right, and there's nothing in between. And if I had to vote again tomorrow, I'd do the same thing. You need a politician that's going to stand up for the right things, like collectives, to ensure that artists have a place to live. We've made this city too expensive, not only for artists, but for everyone to come here, and that's sad. In 2009, that was the first time ever that we had negative migration. That means that more people left Calgary than moved here, and that greatly concerns me, and it has a lot to do with the price. I was up in Jasper on a little golf tour, and I was talking to a young guy who was there, and he loved Calgary. He wanted to stay here. He just couldn't find accommodation, and he was an artist, and I think that's our loss at the end of the day. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm looking for someone who wants to spend 1.5 minutes talking about affordable spaces for artists. Naheed Nenshi.
He wanted to go again. I will start by, as I always do when he mentions this, by thanking Alderman Connolly for what he did at the Summits of Montreux. It was an immensely courageous act, and it was one of the moments when I was most proud of himself, of Alderman Pincott, and of Alderman Marr for standing in front of that crowd and standing up for what was right. But it's patchwork. We have to create a much better affordable housing solution for everyone, including artists. And there's a few ways we do that. Number one is, without question, we have to do the thing that the City Council has not had the guts to do. We have to legalize secondary suites across the city, and we have to do it now. That will bring tens of thousands of people living in illegal suites into the legal framework so that if they have a problem with their landlord, they have some recourse without having to be kicked out of their homes. But that's only part of the answer. The next part of the answer is we have to modernize the land use bylaw, as you've heard, in order to allow live-work studios in both residentially zoned and commercially zoned areas. It's an easy change, it's a minor change, but it will really open up space. We have to be more flexible in our thinking as to the use of spaces in industrial areas and so on in order to accommodate this kind of activity. And finally, we have to look at affordable housing as more than just the Calgary Housing Corporation, the government buying and running affordable housing units. We have to do things in conjunction with the nonprofit sector, with cooperatives, and in fact, even with the private sector in building complete communities.
All right. Naheed, you won't be needing that red card anymore. And Joe Connolly wants back in on this question.
Thank you very much. I couldn't disagree with my friend Naheed anymore. When we were coming down to the end of council, I actually put forward a notice of motion. And it was about trying to get a zone around secondary suites. And it was around LRT stations where we've got transportation and also where we have educational institutes. Because I got news for you, most of them already have secondary suites there. All we're trying to do is upgrade them and make them legal because I'm worried about the safety factor. It's a very complex issue. I have a secondary suite beside me, behind me, and in front of my house where I live. And you know what? We get along fine. Everything's great. However, other areas, they're a bit more challenged. So when you say it's simple, it's really not that simple. And having been a community president, I'll tell you, it's not that simple. But I did put forward a notice of motion that applied to places like the University of Calgary and applied to places like SAIT, which would in a 300-meter area, allow secondary suites to be legalized. And that's coming in November. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Geez, I knew I love buttons. Arthritis. Roberta! Come here, would you? Kid me. I'm on blood thinners, so don't stab me. If I start bleeding, I may not stop. Oh, thank you, my dear. Now let this be a lesson, folks. If we find supporting art can be a pain in the knuckles sometimes, just look for a friendly artist. They're all over and they're willing to help. I have a question. Calgarians currently experience uneven engagement with arts and culture. Many are unaware of our city's rich and diverse cultural landscape, and many others are unable to access cultural activities and services. For example, there are no major cultural institutions east of Deerfoot. What would you do to ensure equal access for all citizens to arts and culture in Calgary? Thank you.
All right, the hard act to follow slot goes to Rick McIver.
Well, where else but at an ArtsVote forum would you see a performance like that? Thank you very much. And you know what? I appreciate the question, and I'm grateful actually I got that, because we need to do some things that I've long talked about. I think we need to, through that bonusing program that I talked about, I think we need a spoke and satellite system, with the downtown being the hub of the arts center that it is now, and I think we need at least 6 satellite arts facilities around the city. And I go back historically, I think of Shakespeare, how they traveled. And I would like to, if we did that, I'd like to see you engage with the bigger arts community groups downtown and have them tour to take the arts out to the other communities and get people there that might not be able to get downtown to get engaged, and they would start feeding into the downtown. And some of the smaller venues and the smaller arts groups that perform in those satellite organizations could be invited to the big downtown things. I think that cross-pollinization would be very important. And to be specific, we need to support the International Avenue Cultural Arts Center, and I will do that as Mayor of Calgary. I promise you that. That is something that is important. It's on Council's agenda, and we need to push that forward. And while I've got a little bit of time left, I'll let you know, a lot of you people probably do not know that I was one of the founding parents of the Canadian Choral Music School in the city of Calgary. I had my son involved in the Calgary Boys Choir, in Theatre Calgary, in the Shakespeare Company, in the Calgary Young People's Theatre. Most people here probably do not know these things. And while I've got a few seconds left, I thought I would share that with you. So with that background, I would support the hub and satellite system and that International Avenue Arts plan is something that I would like very much to see the City of Calgary have. Thank you.
All right, spending his last card with a 1.5-minute rebuttal is Craig Burrows.
Great. Thank you, Jim Carrey, in the mask. That was great. First of all, I'm rebutting against Rick because I had to say this because the reality is this. I was on council for 6 years with Rick, and Rick voted against everything. Every single budget he voted against. So everything he says, he likes something, but he won't end up saying yes. He votes no. He lets Bob, he let me, he let Joe, and actually Alden Cece make the yes, and then once the yes came out, he voted no, because that built his profile as Dr. No. But what would happen if council were to listen to the majority of Rick McIver? You'd have no infrastructure. You'd have nothing, because he voted against everything. So I find it a little rich that he's going to start supporting things, because he has a track record of not. He wants to say he's going to do a 4% cut in the budget. Be very afraid of someone who says 4% while actually showing you a plan, because that would scare me, especially on his track record. The reality is this. You need to find someone who has a track record that you can improve. Now, it's very difficult to find the track record because council has not done a very good job of keeping records. But ask the library guys here, and they'll tell you what he's done. So my reality is this, is that you can say a good game, you can talk a good game, but if you have a track record saying no, I'm sorry, I have a little more track. Unless you can come clean and tell us where your 4% cuts and what you're going to do, then it's tough to believe what you're saying.
All right, our next rebutter is Bob Hawksworth.
Thank you. Rick McIver's #1 infrastructure priority, going according to his literature, is a tunnel at the airport. We don't have the money for that. The only way we're going to get the money is to either borrow it, which means there's interest payments that are going to have to go on our operating budget. That'll cut, and at the same time, cutting the revenues that we're expecting from taxpayers. We won't have the money for arts. And if we don't borrow money, we have to rob every other single project of capital dollars everywhere else in the city's capital budget to find the money for a $500 million tunnel and roadworks project at the airport. And you know darn well, arts are going to be the ones that get chucked off the bus in order to make room for that project. It's not my vision, it's not Calgarians' vision. It is Alderman McIver's vision, is an airport tunnel. Thank you.
I am Christine Cook from the International Festival of Animated Objects. Calgary Arts Development was created in 2005 to play a leadership role in realizing the potential of arts and culture in Calgary. As the city's designated arts development authority, it is a central hub that promotes, connects, advocates for, and leads strategic initiatives in the arts to animate Calgary as a vibrant cultural center. Do you support maintaining the existing budget for CADA, and what role will Calgary Arts Development play in your administration as compared to similar organizations like Calgary Economic Development and Tourism Calgary?
And this one goes to Wayne Stewart.
One of the things that I bring to this task when I am elected mayor is a record of getting people who don't agree working together. People who you might not conclude have any common interest. And sometimes people who don't like each other. I have a record of getting people working together. towards common purpose. So I would bring that to City Hall. One of the things that I'm quite pleased about as we look at the application for the Cultural Capital of Canada is that it is bringing a number of groups together that don't seem automatically to have common interest, and that is a start. So the answer to your question is I would fully support Calgary Arts Development, the existing budget, if that is adequate, and I would integrate Calgary Arts Development with the Calgary Economic Development and the Chamber and various other groups, Tourism Alberta, Tourism Calgary, in a collective approach to arts and culture and to tourism in Calgary and in Alberta. I think that's the only way we're going to get what we need to get done, is to work together, because together we can do anything, and this city has proven that. Working alone, we can only do small things, and this city is ready to do big things, so let's get at it.
All right, we have Bob Hawksworth rebutting for 1.5 minutes now. Throwing the last one you...
I traded with barrels. A good mayor has to negotiate. That's what it's all about, Jim. What's the matter with you? Because I wanted this question. Come on. Trading votes, exactly. Anyway, I just want to talk about Terry Rock and the great work that Kata does, because I've actually worked with Terry. We brought the Junos here together and did a lot of work there. Before that, we brought the CCMAs here. The film festival's on tonight. I hope everybody's going to the grand opening. That's why I'm going to have to leave early tonight before we get through all this. But at the end of the day, what you're talking about here is tourism. And when we think about tourism, we always talk about the national stage. But you know, there's great opportunity just locally. There's great opportunity by advertising in places like Lethbridge and Medicine Hat and Red Deer, because they want to come to Calgary. So when we get the cultural capital designation, I'll designate $100,000 that goes to Tourism Calgary so they can promote that. And I'll tell you what that'll do. They'll go to Travel Alberta and they'll go to other levels of government and they'll easily turn that into $300,000, and they'll promote the heck out of this city and they'll promote the arts, and that's what we need.
All right, now we have Barb Higgins for 1 minute.
I absolutely support CADA and continued funding for that, which was the first part of your question. And the second part of your question, what role would the arts play in tourism and Calgary economic development? I'm surprised that's even a question, actually, because it suggests that that's not being encouraged already, which just doesn't make sense to me. I know Alberta College of Art and Design has done such a great job of bringing together the business sector with the more creative thinking sector and getting business thinking in creative ways. And so of course it makes sense to create synergies between the business sector, the tourism sector, and the arts sector, because we all benefit in terms of Calgary development, Alberta development, and Canadian development. We need to foster relationships at all levels, and it only makes sense for us all to think creatively about every aspect of life. I absolutely encourage more development of CADA and the relationship moving forward.
My name is Chris Demeanor. I'm a local songwriter and performer. This year, Calgary adopted a new festival and event policy in recognition of the fact that festivals and events enhance the quality of life in Calgary and contribute to Calgary's development. The policy was accompanied by an investment of $1 million in 2010 and $1.5 million in 2011 to help subsidize city services for eligible events. Nevertheless, many arts groups continue to find it difficult to work with the city to put on their events, hearing conflicting messages over the cost of pay for duty officers and lacking early enough city approval for holding their event, among other issues. As mayor, do you support the continued subsidizing of city services for arts events and festivals? And how would you go about improving the communication between the city and events occurring within it?
All right. And this question will go to John Lord.
Well, thank you. You know, I think back when we started the Marteloup Summer Festival, and it was the very first festival, we started it on an absolute shoestring. And people didn't think it would fly, you know, putting tables out in the pavement and so on. The city came down and put barricades up. Now I look at it and it's turned into big business almost. And we have to pay the city an enormous amount of money to do it. And I'm wondering, when did festivals start being looked at like cash cows by the city? I mean, why aren't we putting our people first? And the reality is that the city could be doing a lot more for festivals, and in other cities they do these things for free, but now it's become extremely difficult. I did a lot of work this year trying to help the Blues Festival get over some of the red tape and hassles. It was unbelievable what was going on with the city. As mayor, I would put a stop to that. I would absolutely get our city working with the people and helping them put these things on, not throwing up all kinds of red tape and barricades. I said, you know, when you start looking at, you know, what we can do with festivals in Calgary, and having helped with so many of them over the years, there's just a whole bunch of details there the city really needs to learn about, needs to focus on. In my life, you know, retail is detail. That's what you have to look at if you want to get this thing happening better. And I kind of look at, you know, doing things and having perspectives that maybe no one else seems to have. My history is taking on big challenges that other people think are impossible. People told me it was impossible to revitalize that rundown district. People told me it was impossible to solve the 30-year battle between Stampede and Victoria Park. I said, you know, the reality is my history is going out and doing things that are considered impossible. And I think that looking forward as to how we are going to change the culture at City Hall, how we're going to get the people of Calgary really focused on supporting the arts, and really getting out with their pocketbook and really attending these events. I think that it's a challenge for sure, but I have the background to be able to deliver on all of that. It's a continuation basically of my life's work. Thank you.
It's becoming clear the choice today is between card spenders and card hoarders. We have Bob Hawksworth next for a minute and a half.
Thank you. Yes, our festivals and the policy council adopted to support festivals is absolutely the right policy. It's a great way for Calgarians to experience their city in unique and special ways. This past summer, people just had a great time of experiencing Calgary, especially in the middle of a recession when maybe the dollars aren't there, and this is a way that you enjoy the summer, such as we had. This is why also I'm not one of those who are promising all kinds of major tax cuts and changes, structural changes to our tax system, because these are priorities that Calgarians want. And we need to ensure that the festival policy is funded. The other thing that I proposed today in my arts policy that I announced, and some of you have copies of it, is let's establish a single point of contact for artists and art organizations. So whether it be planning approvals, business licensing, all these other approvals for festivals, we need to have an identified person whose job it is to clear through all of the rules and regulations and facilitate the approval process. We also, in my view, need to take a look at the relationship between the arts group and the recreation department and CADA to ensure there's an alignment and better coordination, collaboration, and reduction of duplication. Thank you.
All right, I want a yellow now. Who's got a yellow? I need a yellow. Now head and then sheet.
I was expecting Alderman McIver would take this one because, as many of you are aware, Alderman McIver was the driving force behind that festival's policy, and I applaud him for it. It was a wonderful thing, and of course I am very much in favor of continuing that policy. Now, it was a pilot year, so we have to check the amount of money and see if the amount of money was right or wrong and move forward. But I think what Chris is asking, I'm excited that I get to answer a question from Chris Demeanor. I think one of the things Chris was asking, though, was what about the red tape? And this is actually a problem throughout the city. You know, we can talk a lot about single points of contact and so on, but the real issue is that the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. The city lacks a customer service culture, and it lacks the ability to help citizens do their jobs better. So what we need is to change that culture, and it's not easy. It's going to be tough to do, but we have to flip it 100% around from the city as regulator to the city as facilitator of better quality of life. The folks who look after festivals have to say, my success is if the folk festival is fabulous this year, not if one note from a soul singer goes above 110 decibels one day.
All right, we're down to our final three questions now. So I'll call our next questioner to the microphone, please.
Hello, potential mayors. I am the questioner.
You're a little more than that.
As Diane DePrima said, the only war that matters is the war against the imagination. The only war that matters is the war against the imagination. The only war that matters is the war against the imagination. All other wars are subsumed in it. With that in mind, I am sick of hearing about red tape. I am sick about hearing about Calgary as a Kafka novel. I am sick of hearing about arts and recreation. I am sick of hearing about arts and tourism. It is arts and culture, to be clear. This is about creative thinking. It's about imagination. It is about creating a city with imagination. Without the artist, that isn't possible, point blank. Craig Burrows has been an MC. I would like to say that John Lord came down and said his poems at a slam. This is before he was running for mayor. And I would like to say that Ms. Barb Higgins is a djembe drummer. There are a few people who are actually involved in the grassroots movement of this city and arts, and I'd like to acknowledge that. Under the current public art policy, 1% of the total costs for City of Calgary capital projects over $1 million is allocated to the public art. What innovative and funding solutions will you develop to help support arts and culture in this city? Thank you very much.
All right, and the arts funding question goes to Naheed Nenshi.
There were two questions in one there. That was a complex question. So first of all, let's talk about the public art 1% draw. That's really important. It's unbelievably important. I'll give you the example of the new C train station near my house, the McKnight Westwind station. At McKnight Westwinds, there is a beautiful, whimsical, climbable, fun piece of sculpture up front where you always see kids interacting with the art. I love it. It's a C train station in the middle of a parking lot, but it has this beautiful piece. But even more important, if you haven't been there, go there. Get on the C train and go there after this. And look at the shelters, because the shelters have encased in them art that comes from found objects from the community, and it's a community largely of immigrants. It's people's citizenship papers, their landing papers, pictures of their grandparents immigrating. It is so beautiful. And the station itself is also beautiful, and it makes me think about how art can help us think in different ways about community. So yes, we have to keep the 1%, no question. And we have to look at encouraging private developers to do the same thing. Some of them are on board, others need to be on board with doing that as well. The larger question about funding is a really important one. And you know, folks, it's a tough one. We have two people on this panel, Ms. Higgins and Mr. McIver, who've set forth pretty straightforwardly that they are going to have a lower tax increase next year, the same tax increase that's being looked at, but that they are also going to protect 3 of the largest city departments from any cuts, which means that there is going to be extraordinary pressure to cut CADA, to cut civic partner funding, maybe as much as 10% under Alderman McIver's plan. We cannot allow this to happen. We have to be able to defend the funding that we have in order to be able to move forward and make sure that arts and culture take their center stage as an important driver of everything we do in this community.
All right, a minute and a half for Barb Higgins.
I have said no such thing, and I will ask you, this is the second time you've said it, I will ask you, please read my documents closer.
So you're not
Thank
preserving
you.
the police, fire, and emergency service?
I have not said that I am going to completely protect that budget, no.
Okay, fix your website.
Thank you. I've said, go to the website, Naheed. Go to the website. Sherry D. also forgot to mention that I've been at the Spoken Word Festival, and I am very much a grassroots supporter and volunteer of the arts. I absolutely believe that the city must continue funding at its current levels. It is going to be a tight couple of years ahead, but I think that's where we need to get creative. A very good friend of mine works for a firm that wanted to donate public art to the city. The city made it so difficult, the firm gave up and gave it to a facility that that had nothing to do with the city. So this is where the city doesn't need to spend money, but needs to be creative and needs to be more collaborative in working with the arts in terms of allowing for public art and moving forward. And so I agree with keeping the current level of funding, but I think this is where we need to work with the business community. I don't think this is rocket science. We've got a dynamic business community that gets the value of this. When they're attracting, when we're attracting new companies to the city gets this already.
All right, we have Wayne Stewart now for a minute.
Thank you. Well, I want to admit to you all that I don't sing and I don't dance and I don't have very much of any other kind of artistic talent, but I really enjoy it when you do. So I plan to come. I want to just clarify something too. I would turn the city's cultural approach 180 degrees, which is 80 degrees more than Naheed would turn it. A couple of things that haven't been mentioned. I think public art includes the way we design and build our buildings. And our downtown area is a dreadful looking place, and we've got to insist that when the private sector is putting up buildings, that they too pay attention. We've got some very good creative architects in our city. And I think public art, which is very important to me, also includes the way we build our buildings. But also there's other ways to build infrastructure, and I think public-private partnerships is one of those ways.
Before I begin my question, I would like to preface with a game.
3 words. First word. Small. Small. Condense.
Gather.
Shrink. Box. Tiny.
Collect.
Together. Tiny.
Gather.
Gather.
Gather. Pick up.
Collect.
Collect.
Keep. Collective. Keep. Keep.
Hope.
Amuse.
Art.
Alive.
Arts live.
Artists.
Alive.
Nerd.
To many, Calgary has developed a relationship as a city capable of producing excellent artists, but incapable of keeping them. With many young artists, in particularly moving to large cities like Montreal, Toronto, or Vancouver, as mayor, what policies or initiatives would you adopt to ensure that artists are compelled to continue their practice in this city?
And telling us how they will keep artists in Calgary will be Craig Burrows.
What about comedy? No one's talked about comedy today. Couple of things. Thank you for that. It's 3 points I look at. First of all, we got to make it affordable that you can actually live here. 2, we have all these our great schools building some great talent to here, but you know what? If there's no jobs, they got to go. And I was actually talking to people in the creative industry about the opportunity that we're missing. Right now, the creative industry does about $100 million a year in business. We think that if we actually build the film studio with the promise of the federal government, that we can actually create that in 5 years, a $500 million industry. Well, $500 million industry is going to hire a lot of people. Now, that's just one sector of the economy, but that's one example showing that actually the arts drive. And what it really bothers me, that we have more Emmy and Oscar nominees here, that they have to leave. So that's terrible. So I think what we got to start doing is providing that, working with schools, providing the right recreations, providing the affordability so you can live here. And I had another great idea, but I got hit by a hockey puck about 10 years ago, so I lose my mind once in a while. But any event, also just as far as embracing local talent again, is that we need to highlight. So what I want to tell you is on October 12th, it just came back to my head, we're doing Bands for Boroughs at Stockyard. So local talent having to show themselves, and we're going to actually $20, and what we're going to do is all the money goes to domestic violence for the YWCA. So you know what? The first thing America can do is start sponsoring, promoting local artists, and we're going to do that October 12th, okay? So let's get out there and start organizing and supporting our artists, and you know what? They're going to live here, grow here, and we're going to be so proud that they are here.
All right, now we have Wayne Stewart with a 1.5-minute rebuttal.
I was very much with you until you put the word compel in your question. I would not compel. If we can't encourage artists to stay in town, we're not the kind of city that I want. I think one of the issues that causes artists to move out of the city is the issue of affordable housing. And we've got a number of ideas that have come forward. For me, secondary suites and studio spaces are key. And I too would move to approve secondary suites right across the city, particularly in areas that artists want to live. The other thing that I think is important is we developed, and I was the CEO of the Homeless Foundation when we developed the plan to end homelessness. And we have strategies for youth and for seniors and for families and for everything else. Why don't we have a strategy for starving artists? So that, as mayor, would be something that I would attend to. Thank you. But please take compel out of your question. We shouldn't compel anyone.
No, John Lord, if I could just ask you for a favor. I noticed that everyone's out of cards. If you go next, except Rick McIver, who will have both of his cards. So if you could let Rick respond to this one, and then we'll get you in the last one. You'll be in the last word position in the final question. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I have 2 cards left.
I know you do.
What was been said before are good ideas, and I think the other thing we need to do is find some of our major industries in the city that are already patrons of the arts and look for ways that they can fit artists into their employment scheme so that they can stay here. I think that would be a one. You know what? Karma Developers does that with the Canadian women's hockey team in Calgary. It makes it possible for a lot of them to be here. Why can't we use the same strategy for artists with a corporation or corporations? I need your help to do that. But as mayor, I'll work with you, I'll talk with you, and we can do that. I had to keep my cards to the end because after a few forums, I've learned that I take bullets and I have to have a period of time to correct the record. I have supported the CADA and the EPCOR funding 9 out of 9 years. Thank you very much. So I would have been surprised actually if I heard the truth. But on the other hand, the expenses, we can continue to support important measures if we control our expenditures. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. That's going to enable us to do important things like arts if we control our expenditures. And I would also say
thank you very much, Rick McIver. You're out of time. Now, we know that our next question is going to be answered by Bob Hawksworth. We know that he's going to be followed with a 1.5-minute rebuttal by Rick McIver and then a minute from John Lord. So we know all that. All we need is the question.
Coming right at you. I'm Wayne Bearwald from the Alberta College of Art and Design. Thanks for coming to our openings last week. Barb. How many times have you been to the Alberta College of Art and Design? Has everyone on the panel been to the Alberta College of Art and Design? Yes? Everyone? Great. Then you'll love this question. And it won't come as a surprise to you. A strong and diversified arts community is essential to Calgary's future as a leading city in North America and as a cultural capital that can be sustained. The city lags behind other major centers in terms of cultural spending and the visibility of the arts in its living culture and economic reports. Currently, Calgary does not have an institution devoted to contemporary art, while even Winnipeg has one opening in November. What's your argument to City Council, to working committees, and the public? And I'm talking about the languaging behind your pitch to them for funding to the arts.
Well, I think the compelling argument is the ones that we've been hearing all afternoon. This is the right priority for Calgary. This is investments in our cultural and arts return in many, many ways, even economically. $7 to $13 for every dollar invested in arts and culture. But it's far more important than that. It's about capturing the spirit of a place. And I'm afraid that, in this election, there is a frank and fundamental choice that you're going to have to make. We have a good, strong foundation that we have built in this city with this community here, and the City Council has been a partner in that. May not have been adequate or enough, but we have to move forward based on the foundation in front of us. Or we can take a different road, and that is going to be the choice in front of you. Whether it's all around cost controls, and it's all around cutting back city budgets, and all of these things that are the nice-to-haves in many people's view are going to go off the bus or under the bus or somewhere and disappear. And the foundation may take us a couple generations to rebuild if we're not careful about the choices we make in this election. I can't promise you the world as far as the next term on council if I'm your mayor, because we are going to have some challenges around funding and financing. But I will commit to you, as I have today and yesterday and throughout this election campaign, that the foundation we have built is the one that I will defend and maintain. That I am not into the business of slashing for the sake of cost control, because I know that what you provide to this community are essential services. And I intend to work hard with all of you to ensure that that's a foundation that remains strong into the future.
All right, a minute and a half for Rick McIver now to rebut.
Okay. Well, thank you. And you know what? It's not about slash and burn. It's about controlling our costs so people can afford to live here. And the people most affected positively by us controlling our costs are the ones that make the lowest income. Would artists fall into that category in some cases? Just in some cases? It's one of the ways, thank you, I'm coming to that. I appreciate that. I agree with you 100%. So one of the things you do is you control your costs so people can afford to stay here. And then you look at other things. You look at opportunities to keep artists here. And the words that answer the question, those words that are asked for is how do you describe it? It's important. With my opening I talked about, if we're going to make this the business capital of Canada, it can't happen without the arts and culture. I said that. It's essential. It's a piece that one goes with the other goes with one. It's not either or, it's both. And I believe that, and I will continue to support that. My friend here suggested that I was pushing for some level of cuts. Those were his words, not mine, just for the record, although I am grateful that he supported my support of the festivals policy. And I would say to you, ask some of the people in this room that you trust. Ask Mary Rose, ask Johannes, ask Colin Jackson if I've done things to support the arts. You know what? I can do more. And the biggest promise that I will make as mayor is I will listen. What I don't know is everything. We'll work together. We'll keep building the city great. And I do understand that great economy that's at the center of my platform can't happen without the arts and culture as a piece of it.
And now, John Lord with 1 minute.
So I guess the question is, how are we going to get Calgary to go from a city where finding parking is an art to a city where, in fact, art is cherished and funded and supported, not just by government, but by the population as well. You know, I with apologies to Sherry D, I was going to say, you know, it's not about you, it's not about me, it's about us, it's about we, right? What are we going to do collectively? You know, some years ago I was sitting at the caucus table in Edmonton, and there was a big discussion about art and, you know, who needs it and everything else, and everyone was about to take a vote on an important issue, and I said, you know, I want everybody in this room to raise their hand who doesn't have art hanging on their walls. And you know, the room went silent, and suddenly the light bulb went on, and I like to think that that was $1 million statement when we were trying to fund the film studio. And in fact, my relationship with the province, I think, is one of my major advantages that I would bring to the table. I know those people personally by their first name. I think I could bring a lot. And in terms of impossible challenges, how about a film studio that has been argued about for 30 years? That sounds like a project I'd love to tackle.
Thank you very much. Now, before we wrap this up, I'd just like to go once across the stage, starting with Barb Higgins and then working towards me, and ask everyone to sum up in one sentence why they think the arts is so important to Calgary. We're not looking for extremely complex sentences with an incredible number of subordinate clauses.
I recorded a video which is on my website which speaks to this very issue, because the arts round us out as human beings. The arts teach us how to interact with each other, and the arts teach us how to look at the world with a fresh lens. And I'm a little bit dismayed at people saying that my past experience doesn't prepare me to be mayor. I think that I've continually looked at this city through a fresh perspective, a fresh lens, and I think that's exactly what City Hall needs.
What you contribute to this community is something essential. You provide essential services to the spirit and the quality of life in Calgary. I thank you I honor you, and it would be my privilege to work with you to build on that contribution in years to come.
Arts and people like you have influenced my life. Before I became an alderman back in 2001, I was kind of a sports guy. Didn't really care about arts, didn't really know about it, and I had ignorance towards it. But people like Mary and Colin opened my eyes to the opportunities of how a great city needs. So to me, you saw a video I have on my website about a world-class city. Oh, I need an LRT to the airport, fine. But the two things that a city needs is safety and vibrancy. Safety to me is safe streets and safer homes. Vibrancy to me is arts, creative industry, and sports. You can't be a world-class city if you don't have those things.
My mother made me play piano when I was just a small child, and I like to think that learning to play the piano at that age is what has given me a very different perspective on life from almost anybody I know. It has made me very creative and able to solve problems that no one else seems to be able to solve, and have a vision that no one else seems to be able to see. And I want that for everybody. I think art actually does help us to be more creative in our own thinking. And why wouldn't we want that for everyone, especially when I have a slogan of people first? We want to build a great city. Yes, let's start by helping all of our people become the best they possibly can be. And in my mind, art is absolutely a vital part of all of that. Thank you.
As a kid from Northeast Calgary, I would not be who I am today if I was not part of the Calgary arts community. I've always been there for you. I will always be there for you, and I hope that you'll give me the opportunity to help lead us into a community that really understands the value of what you do.
As somebody who's raised a family in the city, and I reminded you that I had my son involved in the arts the whole way through and supported that, I can tell you that it seems like a short 80 years I get on this earth. Without arts and culture, it would seem a lot longer, and it wouldn't be worth it.
My mother put me in piano lessons. See, I can't even pronounce the word. I was so bad. But I am creative, and I get things done. Arts and culture inspire, engage, and build community spirit. A city without arts and culture is a city without soul, and can never be a great city.
All right. Well, that'll just about do it. And I'd like to thank all of the candidates who took part today. Remember, as I said earlier, we do have other candidates in the hall as well. And I'm sure some of them will be able to stick around afterwards and answer your questions. I'd also like to thank all of the artists who asked the questions during the debate. If you'd like an overview on the candidates' views on arts and culture, you can go to the website artsvotecalgary.ca. You can also register on that site to show we have a critical mass of art supporters in the city and help you get your voice heard. They said it couldn't be done, but we just went through an entire debate without hearing the words peace and bridge used in the same sentence. For those of you who had never in the Peace Bridge poll, congratulations, you've got some money waiting for you in the lobby. Thank you very much for coming.